Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to do part 5 of the knife use, knife safety series. Apologize to you, I was going to get outside and do this, but every kid in the neighborhood is next door and they're having a blast. So between the kids yelling, screaming, the dogs barking, all that kind of stuff, I figured that I'll just do it inside, that way there won't be any noise issues. Good news, I did get a left-handed sheath. LT Wright, after I contacted them, they did contact me back and said, of course we can do that. Send it to us, we'll send you another one. Mailed it out a week ago Tuesday. They got it on Thursday, and then I got this one on Monday. I'm reworking the dangler. The dangler on it was put together with a Chicago screw and had just a solid ring. I've cut that ring off. I'm going to get a small stainless steel shackle to go through there, and that way it'll be removable and I can take it on and off. And then I'm in the process of putting a snap on that. That way I can take it on and off the belt without having to take the belt off. I've also done a force patina on that. I don't know if it'll show up. There it is. It's got, looks like ghost raindrops in it. And how I done that is I put drops of Walmart brand yellow mustard, just plain mustard on it, and let it sit for about 30 minutes, I guess it was, maybe 45, and cleaned that off. Then after I done that, I actually put the blade in a small bottle of apple cider vinegar and let it sit for about an hour and a half, I guess, hour and 15 minutes somewhere, and that was the color that I ended up with. Now, that all being said, let's get into this video. Today I want to talk about notches, and this is geared more toward a beginner, a newbie into this. So a lot of people who have been doing this for years already know these. But I'm going to talk about notches, carving notches safely, I guess is a good way to say it. Accidents will happen. I've cut myself more than once while trying to carve notches. I've got you all set up on the small tripod and it's sitting on the table. That's why the angle's different. It's a little more shaky than the other one, but I had to do that so that I could get you in a position that you could see what I'm doing. The first thing is, depends on what you're carving. You may want to clean and dress up the piece of wood you're using. If you're doing a tent stake, you don't have to take all the bark off of this. If it's broke on one end, you don't have to worry about that. You just flatten the other end out, drive it in the ground if you're making a stake. Now when you come to making trap triggers, utensils, stuff like that, you're going to want to take all the bark off. If you've got a broken end, you're going to want to dress that end up and stuff before you get started. It just makes it a whole lot easier to work with. The worst thing in the world is to have a piece of wood like that that's got a broken end on it and be trying to hold it and using your body to help you hold it, and it just have a ragged end poking you in the belly, the chest, the shoulder, wherever. So let me get you all turned around here and we're going to go over just 3 basic notches. There's a whole lot more to these, and there's all kinds of different notches, but these 3 are the ones that you use the most. They may have different names from what I'm calling them, but we're going to go over a 7-notch, a square notch, and then what I call a saddle notch. I've heard people refer to it as a round notch, but when I do them, they're never round. And the time and effort it takes to get one perfectly round, the way I do my saddle notches, I think works just as good. So to start out with, we'll do the 7 notch. You'll want to make a stop cut. And me, I always kind of roll my wood back and forth as I'm making a stop cut. Kind of helps the knife bite in. And then once you do that, you'll start back here and start taking out chunks. I'm sure it can be done, and be done the first time that it's perfectly flat and even all the way across. Me, myself, I always have to dress them up a little bit after I get them done. And that is a 7 notch. These are used a lot for triggers. When I did my video on the spring snare, I actually used 2 of these for my trigger mechanism. You can go back and watch that video and see how I do those. My piece that attaches to the string, I actually do it a little bit different to make it a little more sensitive, but that's all in that other video. Simple, easy. The thing you've got to be careful with on that is if you get to bearing too hard this way, you can accidentally cut that whole end off. Now, dress this up real quick, or show you what I mean by dressing up. Now, if I was outside, I could take an axe, I could take a baton and just lop that off. But doing it with a knife, notice this hand, I've got that thumb up here, and the purpose for that is to keep me from accidentally coming too far this way, splitting that out, and then coming down and getting my hand. And if you had a stick that the end of it was just broke off and ragged, this would be the same process you'd use to square it up. And for lack of a better way of putting it, all I'm doing is just beaver chewing the end off of it. You do have to be careful when doing this, and I'll show you why. This is probably the #1 way that I've accidentally got myself with a knife. As you can see, I'm just slowly removing material. Notice where my hand is when I'm doing this. Really got to be careful with that finger. I have had that knife slip when I've had that finger turned that way and got my finger right there with that knife blade. So you really, when you get ready to take that final piece off, you want to make sure that finger is way down from the end so that when you do it, you don't accidentally break that off and get your finger. All right, there's that. Square notch. I know there's all kinds of fancy terms and stuff for this, but pretty much on a square notch, you're making a double 7 notch and cleaning all the crap out in the middle. Make 2 stop cuts. This is also where having a good solid surface to work on comes into play. There's one side, simple 7-notch. Again, thumb, using it as a brace to keep me from accidentally biting myself. Again, it's another one of those instances where people say, don't ever cut towards yourself, but things happen where you have to. And this is one of those instances where you'll have to cut toward yourself. You just take your time, be careful, go slow. As you can see, I'm using the tip and levering the knife against my thumb. And then there is a square notch. I'm not going to cut that off. I'm just going to go ahead and go into the saddle notch or the round notch, whichever you want to call it. There's a lot of different ways to do this. The way that I do mine is, again, I'll make a stop cut, and then what I'll do is I'll work both sides toward my stop cut. I've got enough now I can turn this around and work from the other end and still hold on to it. Just barely, but there's enough there. And that is what has been called a round notch. I call it a saddle notch, and that comes in handy if you're trying to make a rigid piece. Then you can square lash it, and what it does is when you put that other piece in there, it gives it something to lock down into, and then when you square lash it, then it doesn't want to move up or down this way. Short, sweet, to the point. The best thing I can tell you when it comes to notches is get out and practice. Play with the knife that you're using. Get used to it. Learn what you can and you can't do with it. That's like when I was cleaning this square notch out. This knife worked out good, but say the SE5, I could have done the same thing, but because it's so much bigger, it's harder to handle when you're doing fine tasks like that. Not that it won't do the fine task, it's just harder to handle and hold on to. Oh, get you turned back around here. Like I said, this is more designed for the beginner. For those that have been doing this for a long time, I'm sorry if I bored you to death with it, but that was the whole purpose of this whole series, was to gear it more toward someone who's new to bushcraft. Like somebody said, we've beat every part of bushcraft to death. There's probably 1,000 videos out there on making notches. Everybody's got little tricks. Everybody's got little ways of doing it that differ from the next. But in the end, they're all the same. A 7 notch is a 7 notch no matter how you make it. A square notch is a square notch no matter how you make it. Me, myself, what I would recommend is to watch as much as you can. Look at all the little unique ways that people do things. Experiment with those different ways to see what works best for you. Because what works best for me won't work best for everybody. There's going to be others who have different ways of doing it that may work better. So by all means, watch as much as you can and learn as much as you can. Because the more you know about it, the better you can do it. The easier it'll be to figure out. Who knows, you may watch this video and figure out a way of doing something that me or anybody else has never thought of. That's why we do these videos, is to share the information. Well, that's all I've got. Like, share, subscribe, and I'll get another one up for you soon.